Assalamu alaikum. I welcome you to another heartwarming page of the Lime Green Journal, a brief information about this venture. The Lime Green Journal tells stories of creative journeys, cultural and conceptual exchange, and artistic cross fertilization, where we converse and explore the fascinating minds of creative people. We hope to inspire curiosity, ignite your imagination, and provoke new ways of thinking about the world. For this feature, our guest is Sonya Rehman. She has been an art and culture journalist for over 15 years, writing and reporting for a number of local and international publications such as Forbes, Al Jazeera, The Diplomat, Esquire, The Wall Street Journal, The News International, The Friday Times, and more. In 2012, Sonia founded From Lahore With Love, a startup which not only aims to revive the joy of snail mail in Pakistan through a series of postcards, but also pays homage to Lahore's cultural heritage. A Fulbright scholar and Pulitzer-Moore Fellow, awarded during her MS in French journalism from Columbia Journalism School, Sonia's first book, Embroidering Dreams, 50 Years of Empowering Women and Preserving the Craft of Needlework, explored the creation and the journey of the Behbud Association of Pakistan, one of Pakistan's oldest non-profits. Sonia recently launched her first ever children's book, which is titled as Wolfie. Sonia, thank you so much for being here with us. It truly means a lot, and your contributions are highly valued.
Thank you so much, Elena. Thank you so much for giving me space on your platform.
It's truly an honor for me. Thank you. So I'll just start the talk by asking the first question. What's your earliest memory of doing something creative that stayed with you forever and that has always pushed you to do more and more and integrate different genres of art and creativity together?
Alina, I think it was when I was 12 or 13 years old, I was contributing towards Young World, which
Mm-hmm.
was the children's section of The Nation newspaper.
Yes.
And I remember my aunt actually was working at the newspaper at the time, and she was like, she knew I loved creative writing. So she said, look, why don't you write a story? And I'll type it out on a type because un zamano mein, obviously there were no computers, and she was like, I'll type it out on my typewriter for you and I'll submit it. Maine kaha, theek hai. And
Mm-hmm.
she did. And the first time when I saw, a silly little story I wrote, the first time I saw it in print, I mean, that was such a magical feeling, seeing my name in print. And, it's
Mm.
interesting, Alina, from then, the age of 13 to now, I still get that feeling when I see my byline in a newspaper or on a book or something, that same excitement.
It's a very humbling experience to see your name printed somewhere because first of all,
Yeah.
when you get yourself published, your family, your
Mm.
parents, your immediate close vicinity, the people who admire you or love you, you feel like showing it off to them. Look, my name is there, and it's sort of like it's sort of like adding another star to your shoulder, just by making them
Yes.
proud, and it's also about feeling proud yourself, right?
Absolutely. And I also think, as the years have gone on, I feel the gratifying part is that I'm archiving, stories in my own way.
Mm-hmm.
People I interview, topics I cover. So that feeling of that I'm archiving a tiny slice of history, of
Mm-hmm.
culture, I
Mm-hmm.
find that very, very exciting.
So, what are the feelings that guide your process? Because when it comes to writing, and then when it comes
Hmm.
to collecting different cultural information and the
Yeah,
visuals that may, not have significance now in the current world, but it had a larger importance in our past, upon which this
yeah,
entire nation or the culture or the history is built up. So, what are those
yeah.
feelings that actually guide your process?
I think the feelings are like initially, when I, come across a story which has potential, be it a person, be it a place,
Mm-hmm.
be it a heritage site, anything at all. The first thing that strikes is inspiration,
Mm-hmm.
as cliched as that may sound. And I start feeling a level of high emotion, not
Mm-hmm.
emotional, but a level of high emotion where I'm A, very excited,
Yes.
and two, I feel if I don't quickly cover this story,
Mm-hmm.
it'll I won't have that opportunity again. I won't have that chance again. So,
Yes.
there's that silly strike when the iron is hot, wali chase. So
Yes.
whenever I get inspired by a story, I have to cover it within a week, within 2 weeks maximum.
There's this amazing
Sorry.
writer, Elizabeth Gilbert, and she writes in her book, Big Magic, and I love that book. And in that book,
Yeah.
there's a chapter that talks about, if there's an inspiration or an idea that comes into your mind, and if you don't honor it, and if you don't respect it, the idea leaves your mind as if it's a guest entering your home. And if you don't
Yeah.
welcome that idea, the idea then goes on to another brain or another individual. So it's just like that.
Yes.
There's this constant immediacy. There has to be an urgency of just grabbing it and just making it your own and
Bilkul.
launching it, right?
Bilkul. And Alina, at the risk of this becoming like going into, a bit of a spiritual domain, like,
Mm-hmm.
we're all part of the collective unconscious, right?
Yes, yes.
And what happens is when you don't grab that opportunity, that inspiration, or whatever that comes to you in a
Mm-hmm.
dream, in waking life, if you
Mm-hmm.
don't grab it, what happens is Elizabeth gives it this lovely, feeling of it being sort of like this entity. So what
Mm-hmm.
happens is that idea it goes back into the collective unconscious, and
Mm-hmm.
then it gets brought back down to someone who's ready to
Mm-hmm.
communicate it or draw it or write
Mm-hmm.
about it, you
Exactly.
know?
And that idea just struck with me because sometimes, when you work on something like, okay, I'll just give it some time, and then you see someone else doing it. So perhaps that brings me to a doubt that whether I did not welcome that idea or I did not allow the space in my mind for the idea to live. So
Exactly.
so when it comes to the creative process, what is your creative process like? Is it solitary? Is it private? Is it collaborative? Do you like having people around and you discuss your ideas and then move ahead with the project? What is it like?
Okay, that's a really good question. So basically, I feel I'm a bit of a contradiction when it comes to my process.
Mm-hmm.
You would think that a writer sits at their desk and a beautiful view and going tick, tick, tick on their
Yes.
laptop. And, they have music playing in the background. But honestly, I find that highly depressing.
Really?
I have I feel like the more external chatter noise, the better I write. Just कहते हैं ना, that's why all these writers, script writers, poets, they go to like busy coffee shops, and that's
Mm-hmm.
where they produce their best work. They get their best material.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I feel like I have to be right in the heart of life, have my
Mm-hmm.
pulse on activity, on human interaction, and
Mm-hmm.
that's when I kind of go into a flow state very easily, as opposed to being on my own and being depressed.
That was the idea and impression on my mind that writers that actually like solitude. They have their desks all set up and curated, and they have this specific pen that they write with. And so there was this, I think that was in my mind. But then I saw this interview by Elif Shafak, the Turkish writer, and then she talks about where she feels the most effective in her writing is when she is sitting in her room, and her apartment is situated in the most busy and urban streets of
Wow.
Istanbul. And she's like, there's a
Yeah.
club, I think there's a pub or a club down the street, and it plays rock music. And she would
Mm.
surround herself with really chaotic or really noisy atmosphere. And that's where she writes her beautiful novels. And that struck me. I was like, that's the first writer who works best in
Yeah.
chaos. Because for a lot of
Yeah.
us, that's chaotic. We need to clear the
बिल्कुल.
clutter, right?
Absolutely. Alina, I think COVID ke baad, like lockdown ke baad, I have zero tolerance for writing on my own. And
Mm-hmm.
also I feel like I need external stimulation to write. If I
Mm-hmm.
don't have that stimulation, I feel like I kind of get lost in my thoughts and I procrastinate a lot.
So, what do you indulge in? Do you indulge in conversations? Do you host people? Do you meet people? Because then there comes a point where the idea is so heavy, it's occupying your sensibilities so much that you don't feel like meeting people. There comes a point
True.
you don't you perhaps you don't have the words or the right way of communicating. So,
बिल्कुल.
what are the things that you indulge in to stimulate your creative process?
Excellent question. I feel like I'm a bit of an ambivert. I'm in the middle of an extrovert and an introvert. So what
Mm-hmm.
happens is my process is, and in fact, I've just realized my process through this question of yours. I
Mm-hmm.
will, like emotionally and physically exhaust myself. Let's
Mm-hmm.
take 1 week, for
Mm-hmm.
example, where I will, let's say, have 3 interviews, real
Okay.
interviews, where interview people at a coffee shop, and in between I'll be meeting friends and having conversations and everything. So I'll get so exhausted, and then by the weekend I have all these ideas, information, I have my voice notes and my notes, and
Mm-hmm.
that's when I can write. So I have to like
Mm-hmm.
really verbally, mentally exhaust myself. You
Wow. So
know?
the exhaustion and creating that atmosphere really helps you, drives you, right? And
Yeah,
so what happens when you
bilkul.
when you're alone, when you're isolated or you don't have any company around? Do you still feel
All
like
right,
writing
so
then?
I think so because मैं इतनी थक जाती हूँ from meeting people कि I'm like that's it. I need to really now sit and focus,
Mm-hmm.
and then I feel that solitude is very bearable.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, there's that looming deadline as well. And over the
Mm.
years, I think I've gotten really much better vis-a-vis avoiding procrastination. I catch
Mm-hmm.
myself. Yeah, I'm
Mm-hmm.
sitting on this idea for too long. बस बहुत हो गया है. ये
Mm-hmm.
मेरा deadline है. I have to execute this ASAP. You know.
Mm-hmm. So do you also give yourself deadlines if you don't have other deadlines? So do you give yourself that danda ki nahi, now I have to do it? That's for your own discipline.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think in the sense ke I would Dundee Marufai for about a month. And then by the second month, I'll start getting very frustrated with myself. कि यार मैं क्या कर रही हूँ? And
Mm-hmm.
वही बात है, then I'll start seeing and experiencing other writers or whatever, someone doing something similar. And that's what gives me that fear. कि God, मुझे क्या हो गया है? I better
Mm-hmm.
sit down and get this out of the way, you know?
Mm-hmm. So
So I have to be a little scared.
what's an ideal state or environment for your best performance?
Ideal state. Meaning what, Alina?
It talks about, like, please talk about the emotional state, or when you, because as
Oh,
creative people we go through a lot of things in our personal
yes.
lives. Sometimes when you're writing it triggers a certain agency,
Yeah,
and it triggers some
yeah,
memory. And so for
yeah.
you, what is an ideal state that where you feel like you perform the best, that's where all the creative juices they flow out in the best way?
I think at the risk of again this sounding very cliched, when I'm very down,
Mm-hmm.
when let's say I've been through some sense of loss,
Mm-hmm.
and I've taken a few days to kind of like sit with it and mull over it. And what
Mm-hmm.
happens is once you're over the denial stage, and when
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to like piece things together to see what you did wrong, what went wrong, and then you're
Mm-hmm.
going back into the past. So it's this constant shuffling between the past and the present,
Mm-hmm.
and that rumination, I feel like, helps me in this flow of consciousness.
Yes.
And that helps me in writing and, constructing lovely sentences. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, my thought process gets very crystal clear then,
Mm-hmm. So have you ever
you know?
experienced any creative block? Because sometimes you have so much,
Mm.
you have an abundance of information and inspiration in your mind, but then
Yeah,
physically you just feel
yeah,
paralyzed or sort of held back.
yeah,
So that for us in a creative sense in this industry that we work in, that's called a creative block.
yeah,
So have you ever experienced those? And if yes, then what are the techniques that you use to overcome
yeah.
that creative block?
So basically, Alina, I used to really hit a wall काफी ज़्यादा, and I used to be
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, अच्छा अब मैं क्या करूँगी type. But I think I've now at this stage over the past few years gotten very good at identifying that okay, this writer's block or pause is coming up, and
Mm-hmm.
then what I would do is I would just be like, okay, if I stay in this state, I would, not end up writing anything and just still feeling frustrated with myself. So
Mm-hmm.
what I do is I literally force myself to write a few sentences, no matter how stupid they are, how junky they are. I'll
Mm-hmm.
write a couple of sentences, and literally by the like fourth, fifth sentence, I found my flow. My mojo is back. And
Wow.
then I'll be like, and then I tell myself, okay, introduction, your lead paragraph, you can work on that later. Up, the train has started, just keep going.
And so this technique works every time?
Every time, every time.
So who taught you this? Has there been someone who guided you through this?
I don't think so. I think I have a bit of that personality where I feel like if something's broken, you better fix it.
Yourself.
And you can only fix it on your own, exactly. So yeah, that was just this thing in me, kid. Just do it yourself, ASAP,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm. So for all of this writing and journalism and running Behbud and collecting all of those ideas together. Do you have a
Yeah.
studio space of your own, or is there a room that you've set up for yourself where you put stuff, post-its, किताबें पड़ी हुई हैं, या your own really beloved
Yeah.
items and possessions? So, but all the ideas
Yeah.
are birthed basically. So, do you have a space like that?
Absolutely, I do. I think so. I live alone in Lahore, and the place I'm in right now, I have my own study.
Mm-hmm.
Even back home in Islamabad, I've created like a little corner where I have my desk and stuff. But again, wohi baat hai na, Alina, I feel like solitary working is just so hard, right? However,
Hmm.
regarding the external, beautifying the external space, like I just love the fact that you have your books, your those little toy things at the back, those wooden dolls, and then your
Hmm.
one of your artworks. um, I think that is lovely. So
Thank
I've
you.
done that too in my
Mm-hmm.
space. I've
Mm-hmm.
put up some of, let's say, like posters or books that I love reading.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that just creates that energy of creative energy,
Mm-hmm.
I
And
think.
so what's the color palette that stimulates your thought process? Do you like muted tones? Do you
Oh,
like having vibrant colors around you? Do you like desaturating your atmosphere? What is it
oh,
like? So
that's a beautiful
because these are
question.
the things that really help you in focusing on what you're doing, even if it's not doing anything.
Yeah.
But for
Yeah.
instance, I sometimes don't like sharp colors around me, but then I'm like, I need that green. I need something green. I need
Yes.
something white here. I need some. So have you ever thought about this? And what are the colors that you usually pick and you associate yourself with?
So I've never really thought about this. In fact, that's such an interesting question. I
Mm-hmm.
love lamplight, so that warm yellow glow.
Uh-huh.
There have to be a couple of lamps on. I love collecting antiques and things like going to Dachi and Lok Virsa, uh,
Mm-hmm.
artisans, handmade,
Handmade things.
artwork.
Yes.
Bilkul. So
Mm-hmm.
things I have a lot of that spread around the house.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very particular about the kind of art that I hang in my space.
Mm-hmm.
I make sure it's nothing heavy and depressing.
Mm-hmm.
So I will, I focus a lot on like embroideries and things like that,
Mm-hmm.
bright colors,
Mm-hmm.
and which depict joy and happiness,
Mm-hmm.
or but nothing heavy,
Mm-hmm.
no heavy
So
emotion.
no heavy emotion around you.
Yeah.
So if ever there is any heavy emotion that you just encountered something, if you heard something, something that actually made you still, brought pause in your life, how do you deal with it? Do you let it pass through your system, or do you escape from it? Do you talk to someone about this? The questions, these are the questions that sort of reflect on the mental situation or mental health of a creative individual, which we often don't really
Yeah.
talk about. And so it's such an
Right.
integral part of our process, being a creative individual. We are highly emotional, we're so sensitive to these things. So how do you deal with these things?
Alina, if I see a painting or if I see something on the road, or if I just experience something which is, for me personally, not pleasant,
Mm-hmm.
I sink. And it'll take me like a couple of hours or maybe a couple of days to kind of like work it out of my system.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to, like, let's say if there's an art piece which is really rubbing me the wrong way, or just I feel has bad energy, I will
Mm-hmm.
have to remove it as soon as possible from my space.
Mm-hmm.
It could be even be a token from a present or something from someone who I had a fallout with. I have to
Mm.
get rid of
Wow,
it.
that's like you immediately filter it out, or does it take you
Yes.
time to let go of it? Because sometimes people often have
No.
association with objects given to you.
Yes, you're
Mm.
absolutely right. Pele, yeah, I would take a couple of days, and now I'm like, instead of wasting hours or days and feeling that same emotion recycled again and again, I
Mm-hmm.
have to take it out of my sight so it's out of my mind.
Mm.
So I'm a bit
That
ruthless like that.
I think
I
that's
have
a
to immediately
very
give them.
yes, I think that's very effective. I think that's something that everyone should be doing because we sometimes hesitate because we feel like we
Yes.
need to keep it, we need to please the other person, so the other person wouldn't feel bad, and thinking about the moment
Yes.
what they must have thought about and presented it to us. But so
Yeah.
important to let go, because certain times there are
Yeah.
ideas that don't really work for us and we still hook on to them and we don't let go of them. So
Yes.
have you ever been in a situation where there has been a potential idea and then you just had to let go of it?
Hmm, a potential idea. So I don't think so, Alina. I'm very greedy when it comes to ideas. I think there's a bit of a level of arrogance there too, where I feel
Mm-hmm.
like if I don't quickly put it out on paper, publish it, even as a blog post on my website, I
Mm-hmm.
just feel greedy. And I know that's a very harsh word to use for myself, but I just feel like it's mine and I have to
Mm-hmm.
put it out there. So
Mm-hmm.
again, there's that sense of urgency.
There's urgency there. That's wonderful. So you working in different genres of art and creativity. So how do you describe the core concern of your work?
The core concern of my work. Meaning what, Alina? Could you elaborate?
So what are the areas that interest you? What is the concern? What is the core? Why do you do what you do? Why do you talk about culture?
Hmm.
Why do you talk about history? Why do you like souvenirs? Why do you like handmade crafts? What is it
Yeah.
that attracted you towards it? So what were the concerns that made you realize that this is the domain, this is the area where
Hmm.
your contributions are going to be super beneficial for everyone?
Well, I feel like everything is so impermanent,
Mm-hmm.
and especially people's stories,
Mm-hmm.
and that is something. And I feel like every person I meet who I interview, I
Mm-hmm.
feel like there's this little hidden treasure, and
Mm-hmm.
just like how I feel about sussing out. These art and craft exhibitions for lovely little pieces like bowls and little uh, clay birds and things
Yes.
like that. They're
Mm.
like little treasures. And I
Uh-huh.
just feel like I feel the same way with my writing. Like I'll sit across from you can put the dullest person in front of me, and
Mm-hmm.
I would still be able to feel excited and inspired by some aspect of their story. Like I
Mm-hmm.
feel everyone is such a treasure. They always have something so unique to tell you. And
Mm-hmm.
for that moment, they'll also tell you something that you need to hear. It's very magical.
And sometimes I think maybe they're waiting for you to question those things.
Yes,
And they're
exactly.
not willing to, or I don't know, perhaps they don't have the courage to speak up
Hmm.
without being inquired about it. So I think as
Yes.
creative individuals, we are like messengers of thoughts, pushing you, asking you, letting their thought process out. So in
Yeah.
all of this, so when you meet another individual, what is that one
Yeah.
thing that you observe?
Yeah.
सबसे पहले क्या चीज आप ऑब्जर्व करती हैं और उस चीज and how does that influence your creative process, even if it's
I
about
think the
understanding the personality of the person? Because
yeah.
I strongly believe meeting and getting to know someone has a high impact on what we do. So what is it that you observe when you meet someone सबसे पहले?
I think it's their energy.
Mm-hmm.
I feel it I feel it ekdam se, so you walk into a room, they walk into a room, you sit with them. It's their energy, it's
Mm-hmm.
their body language,
Mm-hmm.
it's the light in their eyes, it's the expression they carry,
Mm-hmm.
it's those little micro expressions that just come across their faces as they're talking.
Mm-hmm.
It's someone very serious who immediately starts looking very happy and excited when they're talking about their childhood. These
Mm-hmm.
little things you realize, it's like little personality leaks. And I find
Mm-hmm.
that so fascinating, because we're so quick to judge people. जैसे वो
Yes.
Malcolm Gladwell की किताब है ना Blink, पांच
बिल्कुल.
सेकंड में it takes us 5 seconds to judge someone. इतनी बुरी
Hmm.
बात है. We judge someone like that. But
Yeah.
humans are so complex and so fascinating and beautiful. There's so much to them. I
Mm-hmm.
love that.
And do you also believe that there has to be a right way of approaching an individual in talking to them? हम अपनी सोसाइटी में अपनी जबान में उसको इखलाक भी कहते हैं कि आपका इखलाक ऐसा होता
True.
है कि अगले बंदे को easy कर देता है थोड़ा, because certain times the people who are very cold, they have this barrier in front of them and they don't really want to open up. So have you ever met with someone who was very difficult to break down, to explore? And so how do you deal with such situations?
Okay. I'm very confident about this because it's taken quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something I can say with complete conviction and confidence. और वो
Mm-hmm.
ये है कि number one, you approach the person, your energy is, I don't judge you. I
Mm-hmm.
accept you for who you are. So I
That's
actually say that
wonderful.
to myself for that person.
Mm-hmm.
And I make a lot of eye contact with them. And I
Mm-hmm.
transmute, I'm not judging you. I respect you. I
Mm-hmm.
respect your story and I respect your time.
That's
And
wonderful.
within minutes, they'll open up.
Wow. That it's so easy and simple. I wonder why it's made so complicated to communicate.
Exactly. I think it's also because, Alina, we carry our own, our own issues, our own, our imagined shortcomings.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we sit with someone else, they can pick up on that. I think we've
Mm.
forgotten the fact that human beings are so intuitive, and
Yes.
body language is over 70% of our language. You
Hmm.
know, apart from that, about 20 something percent is the tone of voice. And
Hmm.
baki kya reh gaya, the small percent is the words. So
Hmm.
actually, what you're learning from me, what I'm learning from you, is the lovely, silky sound of your voice. You have a
Hmm.
lovely, beautiful voice. You're very warm and empathetic. And it's also your body language. You come across as someone very trustworthy, someone very caring, someone who
Hmm.
will go the distance
Hmm.
for their friends and family and who has a bit of a self-sacrificing bent to her, so it's
Hmm.
very easy to read people.
Hmm.
And that's something we forget, you know.
We read the wrong way, perhaps.
True.
Maybe we're told to read a certain way. We're so conditioned and programmed. So,
Yes.
सारी inspirations आपके पास आती हैं. You read something, you watch a movie, कुछ सड़क के किनारे किसी चीज को आपने देख लिया. If you met someone very amazing, जिसके साथ आपको you feel like you have a lasting effect on your sensibilities, right? So
Yeah.
how do you remember all of these things? How do you memorize these? How do you archive your ideas? How do you archive your memory? How do you note it down? Because are you the kind of person who carries a journal and a pen with you at all times and write it down quickly, scribble a couple of things, maybe draw a little image on the side? क्योंकि तस्वीरें
Yeah.
खींचना, फोन पे नोट लिखना, वो सब everyone does this, but I feel like
Yeah.
the true essence of doing something. I'm just old school like that. So I'm just wondering if you do the same. And what is your
Uh,
method of archiving and writing down your ideas or impressions about people or in any experience?
yeah. Again, great question. So what I do is I immediately sit with the person. I'll exchange a few pleasantries, understand their energy. That'll take about 3, 4 minutes. If we're at a
Mm-hmm.
coffee shop or a restaurant, we'll
Mm-hmm.
place an order for our food. I'll crack a joke, maybe, say something, a little interview, say hatke,
Mm-hmm.
um, and just let them take me in as well. And then what I'll do is I will just put my recorder in front of them, ask them if they're comfortable, if we can start.
Mm-hmm.
And as they're talking, Alina, I will, in my mind, take screenshots of the emotion behind what they're saying,
Mm-hmm.
which is, of course, also on the recorder. And I'll make sure I remember, कि अच्छा, at this point, this is what the expression was, or this is what their body
Mm-hmm.
language was like.
Mm-hmm.
And I would also, at the same time, apart from the emotional aspect, I would also be totally free to observe them. So
Mm-hmm.
as they're talking, like half an hour into it, I feel like I can understand them very well. And
Mm-hmm.
that will then help me, uh, you know, bring them to light in paper as well, on paper,
Mm-hmm.
vis-a-vis any quirks that they have, if their eyes soften when they talk about someone or something,
Mm-hmm.
um, if they look into the distance when they're talking about their future plans,
Mm-hmm.
what makes them wistful or nostalgic, what
Yes.
makes them a little sad, and how are they covering it up? You know what I
Yes.
mean? Things like that.
What are the veils that they're putting on themselves?
Yes.
Trying
But
really
it,
hard.
again, it also But again, it also comes from from a place of a lot of empathy and zero judgment.
Mm-hmm.
So if I feel that they have opened up in a way that they won't be comfortable with me putting it in paper, I'll make
Mm-hmm.
sure I never mention it.
That's wonderful. I think that's a beautiful bond
Thank
that's
you.
based on trust.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes this is that one element that makes or breaks, right? It's like if
Yes,
someone is opening
exactly.
up to you, how much authority is the other person giving to you to, reiterate that information somewhere else? So when it comes
Yes.
to, journaling, when it comes to understanding humankind, understanding
Yeah.
the minds of people, the emotions, and I think that's a huge responsibility as a creative person, and you're doing a wonderful job. So what are your influences? Are there any certain figures, icons, any subjects, any movements, or any family member, any close friend that have inspired you and have inspired your work?
Yeah. I think, as silly as this may sound, बिल्कुल शुरू से I used to watch Oprah's show.
Oh.
So I mean, she is like a role model for me. And
Uh-huh.
in fact, Oprah Winfrey started confessional culture, where she would actually uh, allow people. She started that movement where, without even knowing she had started it, of
Mm-hmm.
confessional culture, where it was okay for people to sit on a couch with her and become vulnerable and feel emotional
Mm-hmm.
and talk about their lives and talk about things that they've never spoken of before, especially on television.
Mm.
At that time was a huge feat, in the late 80s, 90s, when she first hit her peak.
Yes. Mm.
um, so Oprah Winfrey, and I think I've always been drawn to women like that, friends like that. Like, there's a friend of mine here right now who's a lot like Oprah.
Oh, wonderful.
She's a great speaker and very warm, very loving, and a great orator, very creative. I
Mm-hmm.
think it comes from my mother as well, where I've seen her interactions with people.
Mm-hmm.
I've always surrounded myself around people who are spiritually inclined as well,
Mm-hmm.
and that is something which has helped me look at things and understand energies
Mm-hmm.
from and go beyond what is visually there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for me, that is something that's very inspiring. I try and model my life, my
Mm-hmm.
perception, my craft
Mm-hmm.
along those lines, keeping an open space for people
Mm-hmm.
and really digging deep, like a, like a bit of an archaeologist, you're
Mm.
digging deep into their psyches.
So you just mentioned about spirituality in your creative process. And a lot of people, they sort of resist talking about it because spirituality has different interpretation and it's very personal. So in order to
Yes.
understand the spiritual aspect of your work, what do you do? Do you read books? Do you listen to kalams, or do you listen to ghazal or qawwali, or do you listen to someone speaking about their experiences? So what is it that informs your spiritual learning in your process?
Okay. So I've always been interested in psychology, Shuru say. I started
Mm-hmm.
out with this book. I was 16 years old. It was just lying in the library. It was my mother's book, Games People Play, Eric Byrne. And
Mm-hmm.
then there was another book at the time which was very popular, I'm Okay, You're Okay. I mean, that's really like hardcore transactional, psychology, based on transactional psychology. And then so I love understanding human behavior from the clinical point of view and
Mm-hmm.
then from the spiritual point of view as well. That developed much later in my life. I would say, I think it really took off during the lockdown.
Mm.
And I can tell you, some of the things that I do. So I do a bit of a mix. I will attempt to meditate at least once a day
Mm-hmm.
for at least 15 to 20 minutes.
Wonderful.
That has been a game changer. I'm not saying that, oh, I've been so consistent, Yevo, but whenever I've done it, I've been able to assess patterns in my life.
Mm.
A lot of synchronicities start happening, and I also get my best ideas, maybe not at that point, that day, but a couple of days later, where I just have this inner knowing, Alina, कि मैंने ये करना है.
Mm.
This is the path my life should take.
Mm-hmm.
उसके साथ साथ I keep educating myself vis-a-vis watching videos on by Eckhart Tolle. I love his work.
Mm-hmm.
I love his energy. I love his thought process. So a lot of Eckhart Tolle, Wayne Dyer. Um, who else? I mean, there's so many others as well. Um, I'm trying to think at the top of my head. Dalai Lama,
Mm-hmm.
Bruce Lee, even,
Yes.
We Are Water, that
Mm-hmm.
famous video snippet of his during his interview,
Mm-hmm.
things like that. Paramahansa Yogananda, The
Mm-hmm.
Life, A Diary of a Yogi, I think that's his book, the one that Steve Jobs used to live by. So
Mm-hmm.
that is a book that I revert back to every now and then. Keep I will keep, huh? Oh, yes. Sorry, my friend just told me I'm reading this book right now, Alina. And thank you for telling me, Zainab. Alina, you must get it.
Okay.
This is a life-changing book for
Mm-hmm.
me. And I know this sounds like a huge exaggeration,
Mm-hmm.
but it is called Women Who Run with the Wolves.
Oh,
It's
yes. I've read it.
Oh,
It
what did
sure
you think?
did. It actually made me become a doer. I'm so glad that I found someone who's read this book because I read it when I was abroad and when I was completely alone on my own and I was studying and there was a time when I was working on my thesis and the thesis was about also myself and how to de-layer my sensibilities and that's when I read this book. And so it's also about,
Wow.
how it actually made me understand how I kept suppressing my wildness.
Yes.
So
Alina, you know what chapter I'm on?
which one? I chapter wise मुझे थोड़ा भूल रहा है लेकिन आप मुझे बताइए कौन से पे?
Okay. I'm on that chapter, The Heart is a Lonely Hunter, about the skeleton woman.
Oh yes. You will read that chapter again and again, I'm telling you.
Yes, and I needed to read that chapter right at this stage.
And so how relevant it is. And so it's especially
Exactly.
and when you read literature, when you read people, and recently my husband he just said to me, there's no other genre or mode of transportation than books. आपको खड़े
Yes.
खड़े एक टाइम पे कहीं और ले जाता है and sometimes we get so engrossed by Netflix or mobile or TikTok and other apps around us कि हम कभी कभी भूल जाते हैं the energy that we get from a book. And so I was like,
Yes.
yes, that's the reason why I have this never ending love for books because I'm immediately transported. And I don't
Yes.
want to be here mentally. I am going. I'm not going physically, but I'm going mentally. So, and this book,
Yes.
The Women Who Run with the Wolves, it also talked about, how the preconceived notions about your society, about religion, about
Yes.
families, about what you've been told by your mother or parents or khala, chachi, tai, dadi. They inform and
Yes.
how they sometimes decompress you and compress you at the same time. You sometimes, and that's where you don't understand how wild your own being is and you constantly putting that being behind the bars and
And you know
hiding.
what I found there? Alina, you know what I found very interesting about this book?
Hmm.
How the human psyche understands, it's like this age-old knowing.
Yes.
It's the story told, and the story is embedded in the psyche, and the archetypes embedded in the psyche.
Yes.
So that, like through her stories that she's telling us through these chapters, that is literally unlocking my mind.
Hmm.
It's so profound.
And so when you read literature from the West, when you read literature from other parts of the world, do you find
Yeah.
similarities in this world that we're living in?
Yes. Big time.
Mm-hmm. And how do you address
Big
them? Do
time.
you do you do you talk about them? Do you discuss them? Do you write about them? How do you because दो
Yeah.
मुख्तलिफ दुनियाएं हैं
Yes.
उनको जोड़ना किसी चीज के ऊपर किसी बात के ऊपर किसी आइडिया या साइकोलॉजी के ऊपर और
Yeah.
वो ऐसी चीजें जो कि कभी आपके जहन से निकल भी जाती हैं सो
बिल्कुल.
हाउ डू मेमोराइज दोस थिंग्स.
That's actually a very good question. I think Vizuri, to answer the first part of it, and in fact, you asking me this is giving me that feeling of urgency again that I need to start writing these confessional pieces that I used to. So thanks.
You're welcome.
Shit, yaar. Up tomorrow I have to write, Alina. So,
I'll ask you about the deadline.
okay, done.
No worries.
Okay. But to answer the second part of your question, I think, Nina, sometimes now I feel it's now at this day and age, vis-a-vis social media and
Mhm.
how inflammatory things can blow up on
Yes.
like Twitter. Twitter primarily, it runs on hate. It runs on, it just runs on spewing out nonsense, and that
Mm-hmm.
becomes the truth somehow.
Mm-hmm.
There's no middle ground, there's no critical thinking. It's just like shooting from the hip and just
Mm-hmm.
verbal diarrhea type thing. So sometimes I feel, Alina, you have to be very careful when it comes to talking about these ideas, especially feminine power,
Yes.
even psychology related,
Mm-hmm.
even vis-a-vis marriage and intimacy, relationships with our parents, and growing up in South Asian households. I
Mm-hmm.
think you can easily become the target of a lot of hate. So I'm very careful. I only talk about these things with girlfriends, with my
Mm-hmm.
mother, with trusted people. I think otherwise on social media, तो बहुत मुश्किल है.
Mm-hmm. So आप मुझे ये बताइए कि हम कभी कभार अपने आप को एसोसिएट करते हैं किसी वक्त से, किसी मूड से, किसी कल्चर से. Sometimes we feel like, maybe we are old souls in, younger bodies. Maybe we belonged to the 20s, or maybe earlier centuries, or maybe in the 70s or 80s. जो हम कहानियां सुनते हैं अपने बुजुर्गों
Yeah,
से, जब वो हमें लाहौर का खाका बनाते हैं हमारे सामने कि मॉल रोड पे ये होता था, हम ऐसे कल्चर, हमारा कैफे कल्चर ये था, खाने का कल्चर ये था, कपड़े ऐसे पहने जाते थे. सो आई समटाइम्स जस्ट वंडर, वाओ,
mm,
why was I not there? Why, all existential questions. And then I feel like I do belong to that
mm,
part. I do belong to the old, more soulful parts of the, those cities or the culture. So has there ever been a time or any mood or any culture that you
yeah.
associated the most with?
I think it would be, I think, yeah, maybe the 40s, like pre-partition.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's because of my grandmother's story, very
Mm.
inspired by her story, how she moved from India to Pakistan, how her first marriage at the time,
Mm-hmm.
um, raising her daughters,
Mm-hmm.
what life was like, building life in Pakistan. But I don't know why, for some reason, Alina, I've stopped living in the past because I
Mm-hmm.
feel when one lives in the past, one cannot associate with the present. Like
Mm-hmm.
right now at this stage in my life, I feel a level of, and this is again my personal opinion, I feel like if I have that longing to live at that era, then I can't do what I'm meant to do at this stage. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, it sounds very cliched and silly, but I don't know why. I just feel like I love the present. I feel at this point, at this stage that we're in right now, we're in the age of Aquarius. It is
Yes.
a very magical time for human beings. Old structures have collapsed, are collapsing. The
Mm-hmm.
new normal within us is emerging,
Hmm.
and I think people are waking up.
That's wonderful. I think that's a different perspective that you've given to understanding people, because sometimes we go like, उसको क्यों नहीं कुछ समझ में आ रहा? Why is that person not sensitive towards this idea? Why are they,
Yeah.
why do they not understand this cultural point of view? And we sometimes
Yes.
associate that silence or that disconnection with maybe indifference.
Yes.
And then now that you've said it, like it's given me it's given me clarity to not again judgment wali baat hai, कि you start judging people.
Mhm.
And I
Mm.
do blame myself for doing that. Like, okay, why, you belong, for instance, you belong from a family who's so affluential, they have history and they have knowledge about things, but why are you not charged with all that knowledge?
Yes.
Why do you not visit your old गांव or हवेली अपने घर की, या वहां पे क्यों नहीं, why have you abandoned that culture, that tradition? So, and all of these things, now I understand. Maybe
Mm.
they want to work more towards present and eventually the future, because past to past reh gaya.
Yes. Very true.
So in your creative process, what have been the most standout moments in your life where you felt like, yes, this is, I did it, and you felt the most pride in yourself for you, for who you are?
Yeah. Um, I think, Alina, it started with um, so I never knew this about myself, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm very neat. Like, if something has to be done, I will, just chomp down on it and not leave till it's, till I get it or till I achieve it somehow. So that just drives me even more like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for me the most gratifying thing has been knocking on doors,
Mm-hmm.
sending out story pitches, and out of 10 emails that I sent out, I'll get one big hit, and an
Yes.
editor would be like, "That's a great story. Why don't you start writing it?" And for some reason, I've always ended up working with editors who have edited my stories in the best way imaginable, who've been a pleasure to work with. And I think that's been the most exciting part in my career.
Is it also
Knocking
about
on doors,
mm-hmm. Is it also about being heard
yeah,
or being seen,
being validated,
being
correct,
validated?
yeah,
So how
yes.
did you
That I
realize?
see your
Yes,
talent.
yeah, that we witness you, we observe it, and we have taken our time from our lives to
Yes,
analyze it maybe or just read it.
yes, बिल्कुल.
तो आपकी जो क्रिएटिव प्रोसेस में आपको कैसे कब ऐसे एहसास हुआ when did you realize that your contributions in the contemporary literary world they're going to be beneficial for yourself? Why did you feel like this is so imperative in your life to do? And you did not choose any other profession. So what was it about, and what was that point of realization that yes, this if I continue doing this, if I continue writing stories or documenting stories or documenting things, it's going to be good for me, for my heart, for my soul, for my mind.
That's such an interesting question, Alina, because I think bilkul shuru se I've been very disassociated from my sense of self. Like
Mm-hmm.
all of us, for
Yes.
years we really don't know what our purpose is,
Mm-hmm.
what we need to do to give back. And for a
Mm-hmm.
very long time it was like that. And I think fate had a very big hand to play in me coming into journalism, me coming into writing. And never once, Selena, did I think कि हाँ मैं बहुत मशहूर हो जाऊंगी और मैं ये करूंगी वो करूंगी and my art will help millions of people. I never thought that. And
Mm-hmm.
even abhi bhi, believe it or not, the story has to be written for the story alone. I don't care
Mm-hmm.
about anything else. In fact, just today I was telling a friend of mine I said, I'm feeling a little guilty doing this interview because ever since Wolfie came out, I've done a couple of interviews. And I was saying now I just want to withdraw uh, from things and just go behind the scene, go
Mm-hmm.
revert back to being behind the scene.
You feel like you've been exposed too much?
Not exposed. I just feel like others need to be promoted. I just feel
Mm-hmm.
like I've, I've been very lucky, had so many wins, peaked so much.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, now I feel, I know this sounds like, oh my God, I'm like Florence Nightingale or something. But I really feel it. I'm like, nahi. You know, other people should be interviewed. I mean, I'm just saying ordinary things.
So, which aspect of your work enables you to be the most creative? Is it meeting people? Is it the time after you've met someone? Is it when you're writing about that someone or some story? Which aspect of it?
It's meeting people and getting into that sweet spot where they're excited about the topic, I'm excited about the topic, and our energies have merged, and it's like, oh my God, this is so exciting.
And boom,
It's
there,
that
there it
point.
is.
Ooh.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
wonderful.
it's
That's
that
almost
point.
that's so cathartic. I think even for yourself, I believe that just to be able to observe someone and the truest and the purest of their emotion, I think
Yes.
that
Yeah,
is a part of a catharsis because we all are going through
bilkul.
emotional turmoil. We all are going through physical turmoil. We sometimes
Yeah.
don't feel connected with our own selves. We don't. जैसे आपने कहा कि if I'm talking about something and I have a big grin on my face, or if my eyes are sparkling about something, I sometimes don't realize
Yeah.
that. I sometimes don't acknowledge or observe that. I'm like, really,
Yeah.
that happened? So it's just like, being attuned to your own body. I think that's a
Yes.
blessing. That talks about how you are so mindful about your present.
Thank you. That's
So,
true. That's true. And also, I think, Alina, also, things have been very hard in the world of late. I think,
yes.
especially this year, with
Mm-hmm.
inflation, with so much job insecurity, with so much loss,
Mm-hmm.
there's so much anguish, right? That I feel like when you start talking, like hope is such a rare commodity these days. But
Mm-hmm.
when you talk to someone, I really feel it's important to talk about happy things,
Yes.
possibilities, and to kind of like uh, give that exchange that currency of hope with each
Mm-hmm.
other.
Yes.
Even if one is stuck in a bit of a jam, you know help unlock it for each other.
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, I find that very interesting in conversation, when you're helping unlock certain things.
Mm-hmm. So, do you have a network of other creative individuals or writers or people from different creative backgrounds? And how do you interact? How do you support each other? And how do you talk about your works? How do you,
Yeah.
discuss, and what's that? वो माहौल कैसा होता है? Like, what do you do?
Oh wow, Mahal. Okay, so Mahal is very, I think, at the risk of again sounding very kooky, but we try and infuse a lot of magic in our, and
Wow.
I mean good magic in our meetings. Like the friend who's here right now, we will sit and we will, let's say, talk about things, synchronicities in our life. We'll talk about
Mm-hmm.
heavy things too,
Mm-hmm.
but we'll also unpack things for each other, offload. We will also veer off into the spiritual domain. We'll meditate together, we'll
Mm-hmm.
manifest together, and many times things have happened with our little practices. Manifest, pray, meditate together, discussions, raw conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And that I feel female friendships, I've realized now, Alina, is the romance of our times.
That's wonderful. I truly treasure because I had a very turbulent period understanding friendships in life because oftentimes you have different expectations, you have preconceived notions about your friends, वो किस मौके पे आपके साथ होंगे, किस मौके पे आपके साथ नहीं होंगे. But then again, I I think I'm blessed to have found some very amazing girlfriends in my life who, when I talk to, we let our wild ones out.
Yeah.
And we run together,
That's
and then we empower one another. It's like even if it's just about talking, I'm going to wear white today, you wear
mm,
white today too, and then let's just
I
it's
love
beautiful,
that.
let's just enjoy it.
Yeah.
You
Bilkul.
see,
It becomes a ritual, no?
yes,
A
that's
beautiful ritual.
wonderful. Thank
Yeah.
you for reminding that. And I through this video, I'd like to give a big thumbs up and thanks to all my friends who've been there with me. So, and to all of your friends as well who've been a part of your creative process, because I think that's important. Life is not possible without them. So, what
Yes.
emotions or response do you hope to create to your audience and your audience through your work when they read your work, when they witness you? What are the core emotions and responses that you wish or aspire for them to have within them?
I think that at the risk of this sounding so simplistic, but maybe having that feeling that nothing's impossible, and
Mm-hmm.
that even from the so-called ordinary that society tells us is ordinary, you can
Mm-hmm.
make beautiful things. You can
Yes.
leave a beautiful impact. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
And really just giving hope, giving people, uh, making that them feel that level of hope by, let's say, a certain musician or a craftsman or an artisan or a woman who, dedicated her life, like Akhtar Riazuddin of Behbud, who dedicated her life towards uplifting, overlooked and marginalized communities in Pakistan,
Mm-hmm.
and just you know also helping the subjects who've never been covered before, helping them reach that stage of that's my jihad, and that's been my jihad shuru se. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
number one, you know, ek to, I don't like this whole thing, this notion of the softer image of Pakistan. I'm sorry, that's rubbish. Pakistan
Mm.
has always had a beautiful image,
Yes.
our culture, our people, our hospitality, our cuisine, our identity, heritage, XYZ has
Mm.
always been rich. You don't need to create any soft image because it has already been there. It's not a soft image, it's a massive, beautiful, endless foundation
Yes.
that needs to be extracted from and brought out again and again and again so that other
Mm.
generations can see how beautiful our heritage is.
Mm.
So I think also that as well, archiving and reminding,
Mm.
you know?
That's wonderful. That's also like, how much do you depend on your cerebral power of memorizing things? Like if you archive it, it's for your own good. It's like to make you understand where
Yes.
you belong, because I think that's a very strong sense of being. It's the part of strong sense of being, like you where you belong, right? So this takes me to another very
True.
interesting question. So they say artists and authors and creators, they often they become embodiments of the cities that they had lived in, or intimately associated with a particular space or a place, or an architecture where you've lived. So where do you feel like you belonged the most?
Wow, that's a really good question, Alina. You're just pulling out rabbits from a hat
Yeah.
with your question. um, Alina, just repeat that question again. It was very profound.
It's like, where do you feel like you belong the most? Has there ever been a place
Oh,
where you have associated yourself intimately, or a city that had a remarkable impact on you? So, what is that? Look, it could
yeah.
be any location. It could be a space. It could be a house that you lived in, someone else's
Yeah.
drawing room, maybe, where you have felt the most, the sense of belonging, that you belong the most.
I think it has to do with Lahore, Lina. I think,
Hmm.
and like hote na, like old residents of Lahore always have this feeling of at some point in their life, कि निकलना है, terrible city. It's such a harsh city to live in. Uh,
Hmm.
log bhi ajeeb hai, the blah blah blah, this and that, the cribbing and whatnot. But I think I realized the sense of loss when we moved to Islamabad over 3 years ago. And that's
Hmm.
when I realized that, you can take the girl out of Lahore, but you can't take Lahore out of the girl.
Yes.
And I was just like, yeah, I have to come back. So, speaking of manifestations, oh God, people are so going to be judging me. But during the lockdown, well, towards the end of the lockdown, I actually wrote on my diary the kind of job I wanted and that I wanted to come back to Lahore, and I manifested it, and that's when I moved back last year.
Wow. Wow. Wonderful.
I never want to
So happy for you.
leave.
And
Thank
it's also
you.
like the city that you live in, it actually shows through it adds the light within you, right? And if you're living in a city which is so dry and it's not giving you anything,
Yeah.
it actually makes you dull as a person, right?
Yes. And Leena, this is such a beautiful question because kali मैं सोच रही थी, during twilight,
Mm-hmm.
Lahore's, the skyline, the colors during different times of the day, the color tone is so beautiful. Like especially during twilight,
Yes.
it's like a warm yellow, and then it goes into purple, and then it goes into pink, and then there's sometimes you can see layers as well. Then
Hmm.
the palm trees. Then you have these massive old purane palm trees in old areas and sectors of Lahore, Kant, Ho gaya, Gulberg, wherever. You have the
Hmm.
old pre-partition trees as well. And then, of
Hmm.
course, you have the sound of the birds, the mynas, you have the sparrows, you have
Hmm.
the cheel, and all of these beautiful aspects become synonymous with the city, and
Hmm.
hence it becomes your identity as well.
That's
And
so
all the five
beautiful.
senses, you know,
Wow. It's so sensually stimulating.
it is, it
Yes.
is.
So we've talked
Bilkul.
about areas where you've excelled. We've talked about areas where you have super passion in invested in. So please tell us about the areas where you lack the most in your creative process.
Mm. Discipline,
Mm-hmm.
majorly. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like I've got too many ideas and it's very ad hoc. And
Mm-hmm.
abhi aake at this stage in my life, I realized I should have had a bit of planning because I
Mm.
think being too spontaneous is okay with a certain age in your young adulthood, But then
Mm-hmm.
you reach a certain point where you realize, कि नहीं, I should have planned it a bit better. Because
Hmm.
maybe if I had made that investment in myself then, I would have been somewhere else a few years down the line. And I don't mean from a monetary, clinical point of view. Yes, wo bhi hai.
Hmm.
But I mean from an even spiritual growth point of view.
Mm-hmm.
I even mean from a self-awareness, confidence point of view. I
Mm-hmm.
mean from a point of view of having better mentors. You know what I mean? Or let's
Yes.
say healing old wounds. If you
Hmm.
had invested in yourself a few years ago, you wouldn't be dealing with just these same psychic wounds at this stage. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yes. That's so important for all of us to address and to have someone to
Yeah.
listen to these things and to do something for ourselves because we oftentimes we keep
Yeah.
waiting for the right time. कहते हैं, बाद में कर लेंगे
Yeah.
बाद में बात कर लेंगे
Yeah.
so what is
Exactly. And have you noticed something, Alina? When we always think about the future, now it causes us anxiety.
yes yes
You should never think, हाँ कल मैं ये करूंगी, कल मैं diet करूंगी, कल मैं article लिख लूंगी, because then
hmm.
you're attaching the anxiety tag with it as well, you know?
Absolutely yes वो excitement नहीं होती वो it's more like restlessness which is you know bonded with stress and you know then you just sort of like lose the energy to do it that's so true
Exactly.
so
Yeah.
tell me what is the question you wish people asked more from you
Which is the question people asked more from you? How are you? How are you feeling? I never get asked that a lot. Only close friends would ask me, are you okay? But
mm-hmm.
otherwise, yeah. I want more people to ask each other that,
Yes.
you know?
And sometimes you need to ask that yourself as well.
Yes,
Yes.
majorly, bilkul.
Majorly. That's so important. On that note, I really don't want to end this talk. I swear to God. It's been so
Same.
invigorating and it's something that allows me to just talk about
Yeah.
everything. There's so much to talk about, but with the time constraint, I have to bring this talk to an end with the last question, which is really, really important and it's very special for me. If I ask you to give three positive affirmations to yourself, what would they be?
Okay, this is Alina. I don't know what you're tapping into, but I've been doing affirmations for a couple of weeks now. So,
Uh-huh.
amazing question.
Thank
You're
you.
really like in tune with something here. So the
I'm
affirmation,
feeling the energy. I need to come to Lahore now.
yeah. So the affirmations I do every morning.
Uh-huh.
I'm strong. I'm wise. I'm constantly being guided by God and the universe.
Mm.
And I look at myself directly in the eye and I will say each affirmation 3 times. And I always have a very good day.
Thank you so much. I'm going to do that.
Please, it's a game changer.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm speechless. This is the first time I've seen you, I've talked with you, and it felt like I've known you forever. And
Likewise.
I feel like there has been this energy. It's just like I'm running with the wolves.
Exactly. What do you call it? It's like yeah, it is this pechan. I think
Yes.
that's what it is.
Thank you so much for your time, for your beautiful
Thank
energy, for your beautiful knowledge, your wisdom, and things that you openly and transparently shared with us. Thank you so much.
thank you so much, Alina. Thank you so much for giving me this platform.
It's all my
And
pleasure.
inshallah, I will be in Islamabad soon. I can't wait to see you.
Likewise, likewise. And to everyone who has signed in and who's listening to us, and to those who are going to watch us and listen to us, I hope this benefits you, makes you feel happy, brings joy in your life, and makes you feel that there's so many things to be grateful for. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care, Alina.
You too, all the best for the office.
Khudafiz.